Hello and welcome to Free Thought Blog's Conscience FtBCon3. It is 1 p.m. Sunday, January 25th, and we are about to hold the Fundraising for a Secular Cause panel. As always, I will be taking questions for the panelists at ftbcon.org. There's a list of links on the right, and one of the links is for the Pharyngula chat room. You can also access it by going to tinyurl.com/FtBcon. And with that, I will disappear from the camera and let you folks take it away.
Thank you very much, Jason. So my name's Neil Wehneman. I'm the Development Director for the SSA and the moderator for this panel. This is Fundraising for a Secular Cause, because it takes money to change the world. It takes money to scale an organization up from its seeds as a good idea into a major player with local and or national impact. Organizing a successful conference entails similar costs, but fundraising is hard, and very few people enjoy asking others for money. This panel will show you not only how to ask people for money, but also to understand who should be asking in the first place. Presenters range from those serving as volunteer fundraisers for local groups, to organizers of highly successful conferences, to professional staff with responsibility for raising $1 million budget. So I'll go around and I'll give a brief bio for all of our presenters, and after that we'll let them fill in the blanks on anything I missed and or engage in their shameless plugs, and then we'll get to the content. So first off, we have Amy Boyle. Amy is a writer, skeptic, and community organizer who dabbles in politics. She recently worked as a local field director for the 2012 presidential campaign and is interested in promoting lasting grassroots communities for the common good. She serves as the co-director for Sunday Assembly Los Angeles. We also have Nick Fish. Nick is a civil rights and civil liberties activist with extensive fundraising experience with many of the nation's most prominent political organizations and progressive nonprofits. Since 2008, Nick has worked in donor outreach, marketing, and fundraising. As development director for American Atheists, he oversees member relations, fundraising, and the continued growth of the organization, as well as other strategic functions. We also have Maria Greene, who is the UU Humanist Association's executive director. Maria is a professional web developer who lives in Massachusetts with her husband, their 3 busy kids, and assorted pets. Maria helps coordinate the Concord Area Humanists, a UUHA local group, and chapter of the American Humanist Association that meets in Concord. She is a volunteer with the Secular Coalition for Massachusetts and with the Boston Coalition of Reason. Finally, we have Harry Shaughnessy. Harry is the current president of Triangle Free Thought Society in Raleigh, North Carolina. Through his work in various roles with TFS, Harry has been able to bring in nationally known speakers, hold successful events, rally for important causes, and build a net reserve of funds that makes planning future events much easier. In addition, Harry's leadership has played a key role in growing the membership of TFS every year since its inception in 2009. During the day, Harry also runs successful software consulting practice and currently serves on the board of the Secular Student Alliance. So Amy, starting with you, anything you'd add to your bio and or that you wish to shamelessly plug?
I guess just that I'm a director for Sunday Assembly America as well, and that Sunday Assembly is a relatively new non-God-free celebration of life. We started organizing in the summer of 2013, and our first meeting in Los Angeles was November 2013, and we've had about 1,500 unique, well, more than that now. At the end of last year, 1,500 unique attendees, and raised a little more than double of our first year's startup budget. Cool. Or operating budget, I should say.
All right, Nick, anything you'd add to your bio, anything you want to shamelessly plug?
I'd say the only thing that I want to shamelessly plug is our upcoming national convention in Memphis. I'm really excited about the people that we have speaking. Many of the speakers that you'll see here at FtBCon will also be there, some speaking, some just attending, but we have some really fantastic people. In particular, Ayan Hirsi Ali that I'm really excited to see. I haven't seen her speak yet, so looking forward to that.
Cool. Maria, your turn. Any gaps to fill?
Oh, I don't think there are any gaps. I did want to say that from the fundraising perspective, I have the pleasure of fundraising for a very small budget local group as well as for a national organization. So I think that makes an interesting little bit of whiplash I get when I go back and forth between the two, but that's the perspective I'm coming from.
Harry, for you?
Hey, Neil, thanks. I'm just happy to be here. And, you mentioned it's difficult for people to, ask money. So I try to get practice anytime that I can. So, Neil, can I have some money?
Good ask. Good solid ask.
Yes. Good to get the practice. So, and then actually,
how much do you have, Neil?
And so for my bio, just moving on for that, I'll add that I'm also the board chair for two local organizations, Poly Columbus and Sunday Assembly Columbus. So I am a donor and a fundraiser for both of those organizations. And like Maria said, it's kind of interesting going back and forth between trying to raise $1 million budget and trying to raise a $5,000 budget. The problems sometimes feel a little easier, but that's something I enjoy. So in order to get us started, as I was putting together my notes and I'm kind of thinking of fundraising, I feel like there's kind of two aspects to it. There's the inspirational side. You need to get people engaged with the mission of the organization. But there's also the technical side. You have to deal with, how many people are in your donor base, how often have they given, what's your renewal rates, all of this stuff you learn at Association of Fundraising Professionals training. And I wanted to talk about that with the question of why fundraise. Inspirationally, why are we even doing this?
And
I'll jump at once.
I think I can probably go first on that one. Why do we do this? The simple fact is that money is necessary to accomplish almost anything. Volunteers get you a long way, but as soon as you start doing almost anything that you can't exchange, services for, or receive services for free, when you start working for vendors or basically anything, you have to have money of some kind. So one of the things that we have to push back on is the notion that by doing fundraising, by asking people for money, by soliciting people to support things they care about, that we're somehow either selling out, which is something that people say, or that we're just as bad as church, which is another one that people get, where they say, you guys, I left church so I wouldn't have to tithe, and now you're asking me for $35 to be a member? That's ridiculous. I don't have to be a member to be an atheist. And we say, well, yes, that's absolutely true. You don't have to be a member of American Atheists to be an atheist. But if you like what we do, we would love to have your support. We're also not threatening you with eternal damnation. So, it's a little bit different there. But we have to push back on that notion that we're selling out in some way, and be unashamed about the fact that yes, money is in fact necessary to do things like put on conferences, like have a full-time staff, like file lawsuits, like. So.
Other people's perspectives.
Well, I found it really helpful to have a very clear statement of what our mission is and what we're doing on a one-page document that I can hand to people, whether it's my local group or my national group. You need to be able to show them, give them something concrete that says, this is why you're supporting us. You agree with this mission, you want us to do all of these things that are listed as our objectives for the year or the strategic goals for the future. So this is why. It's not just that we're trying to take the place of church or take over the world or whatever. This there's a very concrete thing I can give you that explains why, and it has some good graphics. It has some good design to it so that people realize that you're doing this in a relatively professional way, and people recognize that kind of professionalism takes money.
I find it a little comforting that American Atheists gets the same complaint that we do about being like church when they're not even passing a collection plate. So that's nice to hear. I feel like we have a responsibility to fundraise because if we're doing something that's supporting our community and they want to see it stick around and be sustainable and they want to see more of it and us expand our efforts, then it's not so much that we're asking for a favor or that we're justifying raising funds, but that I'm not doing my job unless I'm constantly looking for ways to improve and expand, and that does require funding.
So when I was in my first fundraising training, kind of the classical equation that I was given was inclination plus capacity plus personal connection yields gift. They have to have all three of those. And so I want to just kind of define those terms, because I know they're words that I use a lot. Where inclination is where somebody is inclined to support your mission. You've got your one page or your one sentence vision statement, and they say, yes, that matters to me. Does somebody want to define capacity for us?
I think capacity means a lot of different things to a lot of different donors. If you're talking about somebody who is giving as a symbolic act, which I think the vast majority of quote-unquote small donors, so folks that are giving 10, 15, 20, 35, some, a bit of money, that capacity is practically limitless. I mean, there are obviously people who work on a very tight budget who can't afford something like that, but we're not talking about tens of thousands of dollars here necessarily, especially with local groups. We're talking about $50 at a time, which, spread out over a week, over a month, over any amount of time, can start to look like a pretty reasonable thing, but in the moment it seems like a lot, or can seem like a lot to some people. So the capacity is just somebody who has enough money to give till it feels good, as opposed to giving till it hurts. And I think that's a lot of people, especially when we're talking about building a broad base of donor and member support. You don't want to rely on the one rich guy excuse me, to fund your operation. You need to have dozens, hundreds, thousands of people making that investment.
And the people who make that investment, when it's a small investment, may turn around and become your best volunteers. So yes, true. I just really want to emphasize, you can't just rely on a few major donors to make you successful, because then you're not going to have the support when you need more than just the cash.
Well, and part of it is, oftentimes people say hello to an organization at a smaller amount. I was running some numbers for SSA as part of our budgeting process, and I'm like, our 30th most generous lifetime donor started off with a $50 gift 2 years ago. And, when you treat everybody like they are your biggest donor, and you thank them and they feel appreciated, it allows you to create that relationship, that personal connection, where over time they are going to continue giving and perhaps upgrading, perhaps introducing you to other people. But you can't just be dependent on a small number of very high capacity folks, because then one of them gets hit by gets hit by a bus, as the saying goes, and you're suddenly very much hurting for your operations. So okay.
Let me add to that, Neil. I think that gets to that personal connection. Really is what really makes the organization go. I know with our small group, it's a matter, really what it comes down to is taking a personal interest in people and just finding out who they are, getting to know them, asking questions and listening to make that personal connection, and that's really what will make your fundraising go. People will, later, when you make an ask or you plea for this cause or that thing that we're doing, they'll say, I like that guy. I think I'm gonna help him out, because we actually have a connection, and that's pretty meaningful. So I think that's really, as we were talking about mission, it's like having a passion for what you're doing. And if you have that passion for what you're doing, and you think this is important, then the people that come around that are easy to make a personal connection with, and that's that's why it blows my mind when people are like, why are you fundraising? Why are you guys asking for money? And you're just like church. It's they're in a totally different headspace, from where you are. And if you keep yourself in that right headspace about the mission, why are we doing this, and fundraising, and just knowing that people are people, you can make those connections. So.
One thing I want to add to what you just said there that is really profound is that we have to remind our donors and our members and our supporters that the organization isn't just an organization, it's also the people, and that as fundraisers is one thing we have to remember, that one of the reasons that people give to these organizations is because of of the personal relationships they have with the people who make up the organization, not just the relationship they have with the organization. So remembering people's names, getting to know people honestly and really, and getting to know them and check in on them and whatnot, that's important. And having those touches, as they're called in the biz, in ways that aren't just to ask them for money, that's very important, and is something that I think when people are first starting out is something that we tend to forget. Or if you're in kind of an all hands on deck time, people sometimes feel like the only time they hear from you is when you want to ask them for money. So we need to break out of that cycle and make sure that we're talking to people as people and being honest and genuine about our appreciation for their support.
Yeah, some of the most important fundraising communications SSA has set out did not have donate links in them, did not come with reply envelopes. And so it's important to be constantly asking, because the number one reason people don't give is that they're not asked. But also that you have communications and you're respecting the person. I mean, one of the things I do is I ensure that I am giving as an individual, both to causes that I'm asking people to give to and other causes as well. And I gave to a new charity on Christmas Day, and before the year was out, I had received 6 emails asking for money. And it wasn't talking about stories, wasn't talking about their programs. It was, we've got this $1 million match, and we've got to, reach it by New Year's Day. Give us money. And then a week ago, I got the tax receipt in the mail from that $50 gift, and it included another ask and another tear-off sheet and a reply envelope. I'm like, I am never giving this organization another dollar because I did not feel respected as a donor. So it is about respecting and recognizing that your donors are not an ATM; they're people, and having those connections is really important. So I want to move on to different sources of funding, or different ways of thinking about where the money might be coming from. And on my outline, kind of the first one I think about are memberships and donations. People that are giving $50, or if you've got a membership that's $35. How is it that you're getting people to give and be involved at that level?
So we have a couple of different membership levels. So we have discounts for seniors and students, and then we have a family membership for our local group, Triangle Free Thought Society. And membership can really be helpful. It kind of gives you a base income, but I think it's relatively easy to get memberships. I've seen a lot of local groups that are like, wow, we don't really want to charge people because they may not come to our events, and it just it's normal. This is what we do. You should join as a member. That's the way that's the basic way to support the organization, and it really becomes like the default, I guess. For the most part, people are happy to do that if they like an event they've been to or anything that you're doing. So definitely should have memberships. If you haven't done that yet.
So I came in as a sorry, Nick, are you? Okay. I came in with no fundraising experience. My closest brush has been with just people asking me for money and building those relationships. But here we were, and we had an assembly that was large enough that it took something like $15,000 annually to run it. So we jumped in, and I just approached it the way I would community organizing. So the same way I'd ask for volunteers and build, which is building relationships, making it easy for people to say yes, asking for what you want, and put people in a position where they can say yes or no, and you can move forward. So having memberships was just one more way to make it easy for people to say yes, and we just positioned it as, hey, if you don't want to reach into your wallet at an assembly, here's a membership. And we don't actually offer any perks for membership. It's just another way for people to support us. That's available. You can do a one-time online donation. You can do a membership. You can, you might jump in while we have a matching funds offer. You might, not support us financially at all and support us in other ways. And just, putting that smorgasbord out there, I think makes it easy for people to support you in the way it makes sense for them. And for some people, that is just an automatic, payment once a month, and that works great for them. And of course, it's really helpful for us.
Yeah, Amy, I want to pick up on that thing that you mentioned real quick about not really having special perks for membership. Mm-hmm. And that was actually our process as well. We said, hey, get a membership, and you're a member, good job. But But I feel like that's been a mistake, and we've looked for ways to find extra value for members without making non-members feel bad. Like, what can we do for members that makes them feel appreciated? And so we've been working on finding some things like that. Like our program meetings have been free, so we've changed that and said, all right, well, we'd like a $5 donation except from members. So if you're a member, you don't need to make that donation when you attend a meeting. So that was one thing we thought of, and we've also started, as we bring in speakers, inviting members and donors to be able to have a little extra time to meet the speakers, stuff like that. So definitely looking for ways to do that, and maybe other people will have some ideas to share on things that you can do to make your members feel special. We thought about T-shirts, but then we're spending the whole membership on the T-shirt, so you know, money is an issue on that too.
We did do T-shirts, but you know, the first month covers the T-shirt, and then onward.
Yeah.
So what do you charge for membership? I'm curious. Go ahead.
For us, we just offer different membership levels. So we have $5 members and $30 members, and it's just an extra way to support the assembly. And you have a tag on your profile, and we'll acknowledge, you know, our members once in a while at assemblies. But we were sensitive that we didn't want to have a members-only section of the website, or, you know, create sort of a class system there. It was really just another way to give. Lots of people give that much every month when they attend the assembly. Just for some people, it's easier to do it, you know, this other way. So.
Yeah.
I think most of our members are at the $30 level.
With Poly Columbus, we do something very similar to Triangle Free Thought Society, where it's suggested donation of $5 per meeting, and if you're a member, you can pass the hat guilt-free. But one of the things that we also do is we say, you know, if you are a volunteer for the organization, you automatically receive a membership, because we want to be celebrating that, and we want people that have the capacity to be giving. But we also don't want to limit access to the services that we provide and say, okay, if you don't have $35, go away. So that's something that we've tried to recognize. And then as we do more social events and we feel like, okay, we've got more capacity, we have more interest than we have capacity at this venue or at this restaurant or whatever, we'll try and give preference to members, whether, you know, paid or volunteer or whatnot, for those events. So something else I want to talk about on memberships is friction in the sign-up process. How do you make that process as easy and as simple and as quick as possible?
Well, one thing we've recently started is taking, for my local group, is we've always done this for the national group. For the local group, we use the PayPal donate button, which has this nifty little feature of a little checkbox that says make this a monthly contribution. Which has been a very good thing. So it's trivial to set up on the technical side, and we have somebody at our meetings who sits there and helps people do this interactively. So it's, you know, we end up with a very easy system of keeping track of, you know, who's paid, because PayPal keeps track of that for us, and it encourages people to check that little box that says make this a monthly donation. You know, $5 a month, you know, it's not that much, but it adds up, and it really helps a lot. So that's one thing we've done lately, just to make it as easy as possible in the sign-up process.
So another source of revenue is what I might call program revenue, where you're putting on a conference or an event, or you're charging admission. How does that play into your fundraising for your organizations?
That's a big part for American Atheists. It's one of our single largest fundraisers. And it's one of the things when you're putting on these events that we are always trying to be conscious of, is that we're not nickel and diming people, that we are doing our best to give people the value that they want and the value they deserve for spending what is actually quite a bit of money on this conference. The simple reality of putting on a conference of the scale that we do is that it is extremely expensive. And in my experience attending other conferences, one of the things I've noticed is that we do things for our speakers and for our attendees that a lot of conferences just don't do. I'm going to I don't want to throw any particular organization under the bus, but I'm going to a conference outside of our movement in the next couple weeks here. And I'm speaking, I'm presenting a panel, and they require speakers to not only pay their own way to get to the conference, but we have to pay for our own hotels, and we have to pay to register for the actual event itself. And when we invite people out to speak, we fly them out, we put them in a hotel for 2 days, the day they're speaking and the day before they're speaking. We obviously don't charge them for admission, and we typically feed them. So you know, these things cost money, and we obviously upcharge certain things, but other things we just charge the base rate that the hotel or whatever is charging us, and we still, you know, we make what looks like a good amount of money until you realize that we spend, you know, $100 and some odd thousand putting the thing on. That's a lot of money, and we have to recoup that somehow, and ideally make some additional money so we can do programming. And so it's hard, and you have to balance even the appearance of nickel and diming people, or the appearance of overcharging people, and sort of push back against that. But just be conscious of it, and give opportunities, obviously, for people who have the capacity to give, for them to give to sort of underwrite the cost of the convention. And that's something we actually started doing last year, offering an admission level that was like the, hey, you really like us and you just want to do everything or have the option of doing everything, so we're gonna, and we're being quite frank that part of this is a tax-deductible gift. So, you know, give us a lot of money and you get to cut the line, and you get special seating at the table, so to speak. But you're helping other people that couldn't make it to this convention or that want to make it to this convention. You're helping us offset the cost, and that's a good way to do that, and just give the option of doing that. So.
Yeah, kind of like the way TED does it. You know, people know they're paying a premium to be there at the TED Talks. But it's worth it because it's part, you know, they're helping make it happen for other people to see online or whatever later.
Yeah, and a lot of these conferences, the social aspect is one of the most important ones, and it's the actual reason really that people go. They go to hear speakers, obviously, and they go to, you know, hear talks, but they go there to hang out. So giving as many people the option to do that as possible is really important, and it's one of the reasons that we now we have student admission that is less than half of the cost of putting on this conference per person. It's you know, we let students in for $50, and the normal admission is almost $300. So we really want students there because we want to get them invested in the social aspect of this conference. So we want them to get invested in the organization and in coming to these things to meet other people like themselves that they may not have around, or, you know, people that they don't interact with on a regular basis. And we think that's really important. So.
Cool. So other sources of funding, grant-making entities or kind of institutional entities. So, for example, for a local SSA group, the National SSA, we have funding that's available to bring out speakers, put on projects such like that. For your groups, what are some of the institutions that you look to, if any?
We actually have a hard time with this one. We don't do a lot of grant making. People, for some reason, don't want to underwrite, you know, suing the federal government and suing the IRS. It's very strange. I don't understand. But we have had some success in grant writing for specific projects, for specific things. And it has to be, with us, it has to, and obviously this is the case with almost any grant, it has to be for a very particular thing. But with us, it has to be even more particular, and we have to make sure every single duck is in a row. We can't leave any I undotted and any T uncrossed. But we rely on members and supporters much more than we rely on grant writing and grant making.
Amy, you had a thought?
No, we haven't, on the local level, we haven't, we're just exploring grants now, so I'll let you know how that turns out. Internationally, there's been some success, but, you know, it's the same idea. We're tailoring those grants for specific projects or for specific aspects of what we're doing with community building, so it's an interesting game, but it's all still, you know, very new. So as for like what percentage that will ultimately be of the international organization, that's to be determined.
Yeah, I do know it is difficult in secularism, going after some of the traditional foundations. I know with Poly Columbus, we just applied for a grant that I feel like we've got a pretty decent shot at getting. I was like, this is weird that I feel like I can actually apply for this as opposed to relying on members and major donors and some of the other channels. So that is something that is difficult within the secular space.
As a local group, we'd love to test out the government faith-based initiatives and see if we can get some money for that. That's like my dream to somehow take a little bit of that money and put it towards a good use.
All right. So the next source of funding I want to talk briefly about are major donors, and different people, different groups define major donors, differently. So let's just assume it's somebody who's giving at least 10 times the level of your average gift. How is it that you are identifying and working with those types of donors?
Well, for us, we're such a baby organization compared to a lot of you, so we didn't have, we hadn't approached any potential major donors from the beginning. We were very grassroots. We relied on small gifts for pretty much our budget the entire year, and it wasn't until the end of last year that we did identify some larger donors. But that was through asking in a lot of the usual ways. We had one donor or one supporter approach us and say that he wanted to help, and how could he help? How could he help us out financially? And we just asked him to structure that gift as a matching gift. So we reached out to the community the way we usually do, just from the stage on the assembly and through our newsletter. And that's where we saw sort of our first large donors come in, first to match that gift and then match it several times over afterwards, which was nice. So now we do have people that we can build those relationships with. But previously they were small donors, they were volunteers, they were the people you would expect to support what we're doing. Most of them attend the assembly every month, and we're looking forward to cultivating those relationships for the first time, because we really came in without necessarily those prospects.
Yeah, and with major donors, you never know where exactly the stream is coming from, where exactly they started. So many people, like Neil said earlier, give $50, $10 their first gift, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we have a check sitting on my desk for $10,000. And you immediately contact that person and thank them, and try to figure out, what exactly it was that motivated them to give that gift. Why, thank them. Hey, this is fantastic. What exactly, what is it about American Atheists that intrigued you, or that interested you, or that made you feel compelled to make an investment like this? We've had people tell us that they read our magazine, and there was an article in there that spoke to an experience they had either leaving religion, or in the Catholic Church, or in who knows what else, and they said, wow, that speaks to me, I like what's going on here. And in the back there's a form that's sort of a soft ask that says, hey, if you want to be a member, here's the form, and they tear it out and sent us a check for $10,000. And sometimes it really is that simple. But this is one of those cases where these folks are certainly people that you have to engage with and have a lot of soft, non-ask touches on them to just keep them engaged, and meet with them in person, and email them, call them, anything like that. That is just that's a cultivation. That's a worthy investment of your time, if the person has the capacity to give at that level.
We also
go ahead.
Okay. At the UU Humanist Association, we also rely heavily on our board. The board is selected partially because of their connections, and they know who's who and who has the capacity and who doesn't. So we do rely on our board a lot to help us identify who to make special asks for. Like, for example, before the end of the year, we sent out very personalized holiday cards, basically, to select individuals with a soft ask at the end. And you have to know who's who, and so when you're making connections like for your board, keep that in mind, that there are certain people who have the capacity that you may not have a relationship with, but you can make connections with other people who have better connections than you do.
Well, and I think for a smaller organization, especially one that's getting started, the board is really, really important. You know, when I look at Poly Columbus, I feel like we've really taken a leap over the last year, and it started with our board, with putting together a board and saying we are all going to contribute, you know, in our case, at least $250 per year to this organization. And that allows us to have the baseline level of services and funding to say, this is the vision of where we want to take the organization. You know, the board, as donors, can only get us so far. You know, we need the buy-in of the greater community. But it's kind of helped us to bootstrap that as we've started our larger fundraising.
Yeah, I would say in reaching out to major donors, I mean, if you're going to reach out to them, I would definitely have interesting projects in mind, you know, things that would be, you know, because people want to give to a specific thing. They don't want to just give you money and hope, especially major donors. And really the best thing to do is ask them, like, what's your strategy for giving? How do you decide what you want to give to? What kind of things do you care about? And listen to those responses and really kind of take that to heart. It may not match up with what you had planned to do or what you were looking at. And think about if there are ways that we can do things or change things to meet the strategy or the desires that they have, if that's, you know, makes sense for your organization and your mission. So yeah, if you are doing that, that kind of helps you tie that together. So go ahead, Nick. Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I was just going to add that a lot of the people who are major donors got to where they are because of either some sort of business savvy or, you know, they have knowledge that can really help you. So yeah, tapping into them, even if they're not board members, they're people that like what you're doing. They like the idea of the organization. They have good ideas, and you know, you're obviously not going to use every single one of the ideas that a person might put out, but that is one of the biggest things that we do to engage with our major donors is just meet them and say, here's what we have on the agenda for the next 6 months, the next 12 months, and the next 2 years. What do you think about that? You know, what are some blind spots that maybe we're missing? Do you have any feedback and input on that? And then the key to a lot of this is the follow-up, is writing the thank you note and also writing down what was discussed, writing down important information about that person, because it's great if your board has the connections and has information about these folks, but you have to build institutional knowledge within the organization. It can't all be locked in the vault of the board president or of the you know, whatever board member. It has to be written down so that later on, again, if the proverbial bus comes along and hits somebody, you cannot lose what are some of your most your biggest, most, I don't want to say most important, but certainly from an institutional side of things, you can't lose that knowledge. So things have to be written down, you have to keep notes, and it has to be stored in a place that is not going anywhere. And it's one of the biggest sort of pitfalls that or one of the biggest problems I've seen in organizations first getting started is they don't keep good enough records and they don't keep comprehensive records. And you know, bad data in, bad data out. So
speaking of groups that are getting started, if somebody were wanting to start up a new Sunday assembly or a new humanist group, what advice would you give them on the fundraising side?
Go get a 501c3.
yeah, do that. I think that I mean, piggybacking on what Nick said, because it's so important, that maintaining those relationships and that personal contact and then recording it is really essential, not just to fundraising, but to all the relationships that you're building in your community. So we log, like, as much as we can, we log all of those conversations and those contacts, because we know, like, as a volunteer board, it's going to turn over, and we don't want to lose the relationships that people have with the assembly. So, sure, if we talk to someone and someone's given us a $25 gift, that person gets a thank you. We reach out to everybody who donate, everyone we have contact for. We don't want to miss an opportunity to build a relationship and to talk to that person, find out why they gave or what they like or what they didn't like. So if someone donates $5 online and there's a phone number, that person routinely gets a call. And we had that discussion early on, like, what's the baseline for that thank you call? Is it a $25 donation? But anything at all, because that $5 donor could turn into a $5,000 donor. And what's more, that's a valuable member of the community who just gave you some love, and we try to give that love back, and then keep keep that contact information so that we can continue that relationship, over the life of our organizers and anyone who might replace us in the future. But your question was about how to start, how to find those people, and I mean, bootstrapping, putting in some original investment was important, and then just asking. Like for us, the biggest ask is at the assembly, but it has all the same guidelines that you would use for fundraising one-on-one with a bigger donor. You're not asking for a favor. You're giving people an opportunity to support something they care about, and it's really important when you're making that ask, particularly if it's not something that you've been trained in or that you're used to doing, that you keep that in mind, and that you make it easy for people to take you up on that by putting whether it's a box you're putting in front of them that they can contribute to, or you're doing what Maria talked about and giving them the opportunity to sign up as a member online, like right there, bring it to them in this space. Just make it as easy as possible for people to support what they care about. And of course, not supporting us financially is an option too. Like for Sunday Assembly, it's really important that that the community is there for anyone, including people who can't afford $5 a month. So that's one of the reasons that our organizing board isn't. There's no obligation, no financial obligation for our organizing board, because we want to make sure that that we're not catering to a middle class to upper middle class community, that we're giving people opportunities to give, but that it's not for us, for the kind of community we're building, that it's not a requirement for being valued. People give in lots of ways. They volunteer, they show up, they tell their friends about us, or they give us $5, or they give us $5,000, and those are all really valuable contributions, and we try to appreciate those, all of those gifts, personally.
So somebody who's looking to put on an event, say a weekend conference, what should they keep in mind as they're starting to fundraise for that?
Well, have a budget. have an idea of what you're asking people for, so that you can make those good specific asks.
Harry, you look like you had a thought.
Yeah, I was thinking, you asked about sort of bootstrapping your local group, and I mean that I have my little checklist. So I mean, the very first thing you need to do is figure out your mission and make sure it's a mission you're passionate about. So if you don't have a good mission, no one's going to give you any money, or maybe it's going to be much less successful. So I would focus on that and get passionate about that. Get your mind right about people giving. Fundraising is a glorious profession. You're helping people kind of meet their highest aspirations in some ways, to be so successful that you can help other people be successful, that you can give and change the world. Like that's how you need to have your mind, and not not have a negative kind of point of view. Go get your 501c3. Make it easy for people to give you money. So take credit cards on your website. Get a Square reader. Take money in person, cash or credit. I can't tell you how many times we've sold 10 times as much stuff because we could take a credit card on the spot. Get a good website, and I would say, find a good communication technology that's going to allow you to, send emails and be able to track people who unsubscribe and all that good stuff. There's lots of good ones out there. That might be too much detail, but that'd be kind of my getting started list, is get your local group started, and then just ask. Every event you should ask. Ask in different ways. Ask nicely, of course. But
ask the moderator of panels that you're on.
Yeah, I haven't seen your credit card charge come through yet, Neil, but I did email you a link, so
okay.
Could work on that.
I actually do all my giving for the year in early January, so if you'd like to be on the list, I give a percentage of my income, but happy to talk with you in December. But Harry mentioned 501c3.
I'm putting you in my database right now.
Okay.
Hold on.
All right.
Yeah.
But Harry talked about 501c3, so I want to talk about that for a second. 501c3 makes donations to your organization tax deductible for federal income tax purposes. People can give to your organization even if you're not 501c3. They just won't receive a tax benefit for it. And some people that are major donors and have created donor-advised funds where they receive tax advantages years in the past in order to dedicate money for charitable use, they can only give out of those funds to a 501c3. So in order to get the 501c3, you can usually get it for a $400 fee and filling out a 2-page form called 1023EZ. If there are also other organizations like the American Humanist Association has a group exemption, so if you are an affiliate or a chapter of AHA, you can look into becoming tax exempt under their umbrella, and there might be some other options for that. But generally, that's going to be about a $400 upfront investment, and also there's going to be some restrictions on the work that your group can do in order to qualify for that 501c3. So we've actually got about 5 minutes left in this panel. A lot more ground we could definitely cover, but I wanted to just kind of go around the horn and get anyone's kind of final thoughts, other advice that we haven't touched on, and perhaps your favorite fundraising story that you can share. So Amy, we'll start with you.
Oh, okay. I guess just for anyone starting out on an event or a local group or really anything, capture contact information. You can't maintain a relationship with people unless you have a way to get in contact with them. So we sign in with email at the assembly because there's no other way for us to tell people about what's coming up. And if they're interested in being a part of our community, we assume that they want to hear from us. And that, of course, translates to being able to ask people to support financially. So if you're planning a conference with no contact information to start, however people are getting a hold of you, signing up through Eventbrite or social media or anything else, like demand an email address as the cost for entry or as a way for people to signal interest, and then you can always maintain a relationship with those people. Even if you don't hear from them for a couple years, they're still there out in the atmosphere, and when you're doing something that they want to support, they'll come back in. So that's my biggest piece of advice. My other one, I guess, is to think big. When we did announce that matching grant, it was almost completely met within a few seconds of us announcing it. We had, it was a large gift for us. It was a $5,000 gift, and then someone did a credit card swipe in the audience of the assembly, nearly maxing it out. And here we'd been thinking too small. I thought we'd be, milking that ask and asking right up until the deadline and possibly extending it, and really just underestimated the heart of our community. So, think big and ask for what you need to really serve your community the way you'd like to see them served.
Harry, for you?
Yeah, I'd say a good fundraising idea is really hard to come by, and so if you've got one, just be opportunistic. We had one of our best fundraising events was after the Reason Rally. A lot of those speakers were heading down to Rock Beyond Belief, which was the next week. So we rented out a upscale bowling alley, invited Richard Dawkins and David Silverman, and I think we had 8 or 10 major secular people in one event, and sold tickets for $100, and we made a year's budget in one night. So I like that, to build on that thinking big. You see something's happening, you're like, okay, let's just put this together. And as we put something together, and then we kept adding to it, and it was probably one of the most fun nights. The only problem is, we peaked early, so it's really hard to ever beat that one event that we had. But we raised lots of money and had a good time. So,
Maria, your advice and thoughts?
I'm a technologist, so I'm going to say seek out advice about good tools. I've used Nation Builder. I've used CVCRM. I've used Salesforce for different clients and organizations I work for. Nation Builder for small to medium-sized organizations, even large organizations, is a good thing to investigate. CVCRM, you have to have a pretty technical person on your, not necessarily on your staff, but available to you to make that work well. But just all that advice about keeping track of the contacts you've had, that's made a whole lot easier if you have good technology supporting you that you don't have to waste your time futzing with.
Nick, your advice or any closing stories?
Yeah, the best piece, I just want to completely echo what Maria just said, that finding good technology and using it is critical. There is no shame in stealing a good idea. There's a very limited amount of ideas out there for fundraising. The things that work and the things that are best practices and quote-unquote industry standards are industry standards for a reason. So don't be afraid to sign up on a fundraising list for a bunch of other organizations and see what they're doing and just rip it off. I give a little bit of money to a lot of organizations so I can see what they're doing and steal it unabashedly and unashamedly. The other piece of information is, or piece of advice is, some things that are industry standards don't deserve to be industry standards anymore. So if you want to try innovating, but do it in a way that you can test. So do an A/B split where you do 75% of your list or 75% of your appeal or whatever using the industry standard, and then try the other thing on 25% of people randomized and see what happens. I mean, if it doesn't go well, it doesn't go well. But if you're talking about a national organization, we do a few of these a year, so we can try to experiment on this, and I think that's really important to keep things fresh and to keep innovating.
Yeah,
I'm going to steal that idea.
Yes. My advice and story, and we'll wrap up with this. The advice is, if you're going to ask people to give, you need to be giving yourself. You need to have the credibility of personal buy-in to the organization and say, this is something that I am passionate about. Because I've met with a lot of donors, I've asked a lot of people for money, and occasionally they ask me, how much have you given? And I am not ashamed of the amount that I've given to any of the causes that I am soliciting people on behalf of. So it is very important to have personal buy-in. On the story front, it's really about doing the fundamentals of thanking people, of getting them tax receipts in a timely fashion, of following up with them in a non-asked fashion. I've had a lot of checks, large checks, that have shown up unsolicited, or I had a phone call with somebody and I said, hey, I am calling to talk with you about X. You recently gave. This is not to ask you for more money. And I get on the phone with the person and they say, I talked with my financial advisor and he said that I can give you X $1,000, which was a 10x increase over their last gift. And it's because you do the fundamentals. So, have that relationship. Treat people like, people. Be a humanist. And that's really fundamental to fundraising. So, Jason, if you're here, you're welcome to wrap us up.
Sounds good. Thank you very much for an enlightening panel. I'm suddenly compelled to open my wallet.
Fantastic. secularstudents.org/donate.
atheist.org/donate.
That's right. Get your plugs in now before I press stop.
uuha.org/donate.
SundayAssembly.com, SundayAssemblyLA.org.
Excellent. Thank you all for coming.